It's the championship game of the High School Youth Basketball League. The year was 2008. We were a team of high school seniors who had just come off losing the state championship football game. One of our star players wasn't even allowed in the gym. How did we get here? We were the Justin Timberlakes.
Timberlakes.
Season 2. They still wanted to goof around, but now they found out they could goof around and be good. And here's the reason why.
2000, what was the year? 2008, 2009? That was the time.
Yes.
What I remember the most, I didn't play basketball my senior year. My cousin and uncle asked me to play on their AYBL basketball team. And it was a decision that I would never regret. The most fun I've ever had playing basketball in my life was with a bunch of football players from El Dorado. And it was a good time.
Yes. Second year, they discovered while they were goofing around, they could be good. And as my son nicely put it, I wouldn't get in their way. I would let them work it out on their own. I would let them coach themselves.
The characters we had on the team made it worth it. Guys from my cousin.
Damon was all-state in trash talking. What I mean by this is he used his smarts to take other players out of the game. I remember one high school football game where while the whole team went one way, Damon ran the other way, chased by a lineman he had somehow provoked, and the lineman chased him all the way down the field and then fell on him, and with Damon's arms wiggling out from under him. Of course, that lineman was kicked out of the game.
Shane Smith.
He played with a broken hand at the start of one season. He saved his father by going into the stands and breaking up a fight. And once a player from the other team ran around a block right into Shane. The kid fell on the floor. He looked up at Shane and said, "You're like a wall."
Calvin Keller. I remember the names.
Because he couldn't throw dust in the air, he would throw flour.
I don't know if he did. I think he only did that in the first season. Did you do that during your season?
I don't know.
He saw LeBron and he thought he threw flour, but he threw chalk, and so the whole game it was slippery. People fell because he threw flour on the ground.
And then the technique first used in Everyone Loves Raymond, where you put your arms down your shorts till your hands emerge, and you guard your opponent like that. It was the same eventful game that had the half-court three-point shot that was made, and the same game that Shane had to go into the crowd to break his father up in a fight.
Who was on our? Can we remember the dudes on our squad? We had Neil Altamore.
The whistle blew. The game was stopped, and Neil was ordered off the court. He came storming over to the bench and sat down. I sat next to him and said, "What happened?" He looked at me and said, "I told that other guy I was going to kill him." I looked at him and said, "Would you stop doing that? We need you in the fourth quarter." So in that final game, he shouts out to me, "Coach, I'm still in the game." That was the proudest moment of my coaching career. And then he made the three that tied the score with 8 seconds left.
Gabe, I remember that guy. That guy was great.
Gabe should have been on his high school team, but found playing basketball not that much fun anymore. He was convinced to join us. And once, when Gabe was sitting on the bench, for his designated time off the court. I sat next to him and said, "Are you having fun?" He thought for a second and said, "Yes."
We had Calvin, we had Shane, Brad, me,
Evan.
Evan always played on other teams, coached by his father in youth basketball, and they always beat the team Damon was on. And suddenly, there he was on our team. I thought that was a coup.
Nick.
Nick.
And he was really good, he just never talked.
Nick came to the final game without his jersey. I now kept an extra. I loaned it to him. It seemed the day before the final game was the prom at his high school, and it didn't end well for Nick, and he hadn't been home. He showed up at the game road weary.
To Brad Elliott.
Last time I saw Brad, I was attending a high school football game, and he saw me and he ran across the parking lot, and he hugged me or tackled me and almost knocked me down, and he yelled, "Coach!" All I could say was, he called me Coach. He was larger than life. Well, at least he was as large as he was when he was in 7th and 8th grade, the start of his youth basketball career when he was the star. Now not so much. Back when he took it serious. Oh, I was glad he was on our team. How he ran there and needed the other team to win. Oh, I was glad as how he had run for the touchdown in Super Bowl game when they were all in their junior league. He just ran over the other team. Not around them, no blockers, just ran over them.
Brad Elliott was a guy who would show up to the game drunk from whatever party he was at the night before, I don't know, but he would show up smelling like complete alcohol, and a few times he was kicked out before a game even started. I don't know what, but the ref wanted him out of the game.
Brad once showed up for a game, and Damon looked at him and said, "I think he's drunk." And before the game was over, the ref had kicked him out. He had been one part of the game standing on the court talking to us while the game went on behind him. So when he was kicked out, later the whole game had to be canceled because somebody had pulled the fire alarm. And when they checked the boys' bathroom, it had been covered in fire hose spray foam.
But one of my favorite moments too was our first practice. My dad, who was still at Sandia at the time,
Right.
opened up the gym.
Yeah.
And this is the moment that I knew that I was going to have the best time at this basketball team. Is we all showed up, nothing was organized, we all just threw the ball at the basket for about 45 minutes, and then we talked for a while, and then we said, okay, our game's next Tuesday. And that was it.
That was our only practice.
That was our only practice we had.
Once a ref came up to me, and after a particular grievous thing we may have done, he looked at me and says, "You're going to have them run at practice." And I looked at the ref and I said, "First, we're going to have a practice." So I was happy to be their coach. They didn't want to practice. They would coach themselves. So, they paid to play. And my son knew me enough to know I could deal with kids, for I was a high school drama teacher.
What I remember the most, pre-game warm-ups, guys would show up, boombox on their shoulder, listening to songs like 303, Justin Timberlake.
Bringing sexy back.
Bringing Sexy Back was the main, just the girliest, gayest songs that you probably could hear of. That's what we came out to.
And everybody was wearing different colored uniforms, and so
Headbands.
we'd have to remove the headbands, we'd have to change the socks, we'd have to remove the
We had
armbands.
guys getting kicked out before the game even started. My greatest basketball season was playing for the Timberlakes. Out of every basketball season I ever had. I still talk to kids, my friends Matt Hill and this dude Dayton Johnson, who I would talk to at high school, and I'd make them go to those games. I'd see them and they still talk about, "Remember when you played for the Timberlakes?" And I'm like, yes.
What?
I had my first dunk in a game for the Timberlakes.
Yes!
That was my greatest moment of the
Technical
Timberlakes.
though, wasn't it?
I got thrown out of that game, but it was worth it.
That was the last AYBL basketball season for high school
last
teams.
basketball
No,
season.
not just yours. that league doesn't exist anymore.
If
They
it's gonna
canceled the
go
league.
down, I'd want it to go down with a brawl in front of the Lobo basketball coach. And that's what happened. That's what happened.
Were you there the day we had the brawl? Damon had been
I
kicked
scored
out early.
60 that day, and I remember I was shooting it from everywhere, and a guy who wasn't even part of the team wanted to fight someone on our bench.
That's right. But they stood behind us. They were from another team waiting, and
It wasn't even about us, and they wanted to fight us. So
and they did, because I remember ripping people off, and Brad
was
looks
sitting-
at me and I goes, "No, I'm your coach.
don't fight me. I'm sitting at half court looking at over there at Steve Alford, and Steve Alford's like,
And Damon, you'd been
Doing who
kicked
knows
out
what.
of the whole gym by
I got
that
kicked
time.
out before the fight happened.
Yes, and you were sitting out in the parking lot.
Yeah, so sitting in the parking lot and then was told secondhand about the fight.
that was
Yeah,
one of the major moments I remember.
They knew he was coming. The game I remember most is when you made a 3-point shot from half court line.
That was a dare from Damon. Damon said, I want you, the first shot you get, shoot from half court. And I was the original LaMelo Ball. You can ask Damon about it, but ball tipped, I got it. I took 2 dribbles and just threw it from half court, and it went in. It was at the gym, and I remember my sister was even sitting in the gym, and she said, "Don't do that. Like, don't go out here and do that." I said, "What? What is the point of it?"
Okay,
I'll never forget that game at Madison when those guys tried to fight me.
yes.
And those
And we were-
everyone was immediately ready to fight for me. Like, you guys were holding me back, and I was like, "Hold up, I'm not doing nothing here." The guy threw the ball off my face.
He did.
That was awesome.
So I enjoyed it. Why did you enjoy the year? Because there was no pressure, right? The coach wasn't yelling at you.
Yeah, I had a great coach, my uncle, who literally didn't tell me to do anything, didn't tell me to run ever. The team had my back, told me to shoot the ball whenever I wanted to, which was awesome. And most of the other teams would want to fight me. It was another thing too. I don't know why. I would either talk
That's right,
a lot.
the big fight.
The D-Hawks was what they
Some
would
guy
really
hit you
call
on the back of the head with a basketball.
Brad, Damon, Shane, they were all there on my back. Immediately as anyone stepped up to me, I had guys that were on my back. Another reason why I loved playing with them is I had a team that was
Big
behind
football
me.
guys back.
I could say and do whatever I wanted on that team. It was amazing.
Do you have a question? Do you have a memory from that year?
I mean, I'm pretty sure. I'm more curious about your
You want
questions.
to take this spot, right?
I've got to leave him. I'll have to do my interview at a separate time with him. But what was it like when you first got asked to join the team? What did you think when you were asked to join whatever the hell this was?
No, it was honestly like when you asked me, because I remember you texted me about it back when we even had text messaging on like the SM9 or whatever it was called. Damon hits me up to play on this, and I wasn't gonna play basketball at the time. I had nothing else to do, and honestly, it was my favorite. I was nervous to ask my dad, who was strict about things like that. I was like, I want to play on this team, and they were all about it, and I loved it. We had cheerleaders. We had girls that would show up with our names across for an AYBL. We packed out a middle school gym one time. There was about 300 people in an AYBL basketball game for us, dude. That was so much fun.
We had more people kicked out of games or
The game's
technicals
finished.
called on us for the oddest things.
I wasn't totally upset with people getting kicked out because I knew I didn't have to go out of the game much more after that. I can keep playing and keep shooting. And that was my favorite thing about that, is I could shoot the ball as much as possible on that team.
You should have been the leading scorer in the city, but instead you were the leading scorer in AYBL.
History, I'm pretty sure.
Probably.
I remember Cole Neal coming up to me and showing me like, look how many points you had after that fight game. And I was like, this is AYBL.
I know you one
You're 8th grade
weekend
kid.
in 2 games scored over 100 points between 2 games.
You guys wrote it on the blog. There was a blog for the Timberlakes as well. Calvin and Damon kept up with that blog. It's still live. Like, you can Google the Timberlakes, and that's still there.
Really?
Yes, there's a blog that's still live. And they would have updates. Like, they would update in the most funny, comical way possible. It's hilarious.
So just Google Timberlakes?
I'm pretty Justin Timberlake's AYBL or
It might be
something.
owned by an Asian domain now.
Yeah, it could have been taken over by now.
Yeah.
But
But I want to
there.
say, you guys were incredible. The other one I remember, speaking of balls, is you turn to us while you're at the free throw line and say that you're, thank you. And you say that your ball is sticking to your thigh.
yeah, I had a free throw. I was having a good night shooting, and I shot a free throw and I airballed it completely. And of course, Damon comes up to me and he said, "What happened there?" And I told him, and this is a true story. As I was getting ready, I had my pre-shot warm-up, took a dribble or two, spun the ball, and as I was shooting it, my actual testicles were sticking to my leg, and I don't know why, but when I shot the ball, it constricted my shooting form and it came up short. And so yes, my balls were sticking to my leg in that moment.
Okay, in the championship game, and we were up against a team where two of their members would later go on to play college ball. Besides, their fathers were in the stands to watch the game, and their fathers were college basketball coaches. We're against Alfred and Neil's kid, and we're tied.
And Bryce.
And
Alfred.
Bryce?
We're playing against Alfred and Neil.
Yes.
Two collegiate basketball players we were playing against.
Of course, they were 8th graders.
They were 8th graders at the time. And I had a good time scoring as many points as I possibly could on those kids.
Okay, it's tied with 4 seconds to go. How did they beat us?
Yeah. Before that was a great play too, though. It was Gabe was at the free throw line.
Okay.
No, I was at the free throw line, and I told him I was going to miss the second one and tip it straight back to him. I missed the second one, tipped it back to Gabe, and he hit a 3 to tie it up.
Yes.
We called the timeout, and I was like, okay, we have to guard the ball. Someone just stand by the basket, and I think that was forgotten in all of the plays, because as soon as the ball was brought in, we all ran directly at the ball, and they threw it down the court, and the kid had a wide open layup, and we lost the championship to Bryce, Alfred, and Cole and Neil.
He hit a 3 from the corner.
Yeah.
Now, I remember that you guys wouldn't.
That was the same game you guys had to give me peanuts and seeds before that.
The only
because
time I called timeout the whole year is because you came in and I haven't eaten today.
I had to get fed before that.
Matt and Adrian didn't feed me. And I would call timeout and we would feed you like a squirrel.
The only time we ever called any defense other than the zone was in overtime. How do you feel knowing that you made the call, changing our defense at the end?
I regret every decision I had in that. I also was 0 for about 50 that day from beyond the arc. I don't know why. It was my lack of nutrients.
And Justin suggested we play man-to-man. And then they got into 4 corners of the court and a long pass into the corner. And one of the coach's kids made a layup. I remember it as a 3. Anyway, we lost. As Shane told me, he had lost 2 championship games in 1 year. Now, whether this was a loss or a gain, it's a story of loss and living through it. Because they each went on to other gains and other losses. But for one brief moment, we were the Justin Timberlakes. We had fun.